Windeye by Brian Evenson, contrary to its suggestive title, is not about anal flautists at all. There is a misleadingly few number of buttholes on these pages. However, there's at least one butthole in this review. I like to think of myself as quite a Brian Evenson fan, which is why it pains me to have only just now gotten around to reading Windeye, his latest story collection, in August, when it was actually released in April. Though the stories do deal with temporal shifts and sort of time changes and just perception of time, I guess it kind of really makes me the best Brian Evenson fan. So you're welcome, Brian Evenson, for that procrastination. And you're welcome, Coffee House Press Q3 financial statements. Though conversely, you Q2. So how deep does my love for the work of Brian Evenson go? I'd say about 8.5 inches deep. So that's about, yep, that's about right. Yeah. I first fell in love with Brian Evenson's writing via his first story collection, Altman's Tongue, which contains a great story called I, which is of course about a foot. It's not about a foot, it's about an eye. All of the elements I fell in love with back then are really back in full force with Windeye. His vignette style, his short slice of life style, his visceral, grotesque imagery, his characters that really thrive on a sort of scientific detachment to one another, which, contrary to what you would think would be the case with a scientific detachment, it actually endears you to the characters in a way that no other author really does at all. You have characters that are more concerned with the logic behind moves rather than the emotion. And that sort of detachment is something that's really amazing, something that really only Brian Evans can do, and he's done it very, very well for many, many books, as I showed you earlier. All of the stories in this collection really are great. I don't say that with any hyperbolic intentions at all, but there's a couple stories that I really want to point out. Discrepancy gets probably as close to an allegory as any of the stories in the collection. It's about a woman and her husband who are separating emotionally, but this is represented with a physical ailment that the woman has, which causes her to hear words that are spoken minutes, even days after those words are actually spoken. So this reflects on the idea that communication is becoming a problem in this marriage. And in the other writer's hands, this would come off as trite and overdone and sappy. But when you're dealing with an Evenson story, you're really looking at the logics of it. The woman in the story, she goes to doctors, she tries to figure these things out. The doctors approach her in a very methodical, scientific way, ultimately not being able to help her out. But this lengthening and the stretching of time in the story is so fantastically done. The second story I'd like to talk about is called Knowledge, and it's a thinly veiled essay, really, about how not to write a detective novel, or at least possibly why Evenson himself has not written a technical, quote-unquote, detective novel, not in the way that most mass-market paperback-style detective novels are written. The story is about a character who we can assume is probably an Evenson-like persona, having difficulties finishing one of his own detective novels, and by the end of the story you realize why he's not able to finish these novels. All around, Windeye is a fantastic collection, possibly one of the best collections from Evenson. The Wavering Knife may still be up there as one of my favorites, but this one is nice because it does really expand on Evenson's narrative capabilities, whereas The Wavering Knife, and even before that, especially Altman's Tongue, his first collection, focuses on just short, image-driven, image-heavy, kind of punchy types titles, whereas this one is more, there's more arc to the stories themselves. So this would actually probably be a better book to open your eyes to Evenson than would be Altman's Tongue or one of his earlier collections. So read it or don't read it. Read it.